Welcome, Legionnaires, to the Long Live the Legion podcast, where we talk about the Legion of Superheroes comic book team and break subjects down so that whether you're just out of the Legion Academy or you're a longtime veteran with your own flight ring, you get to know the team a little bit better. I'm your co-host, Jim.
And I'm your co-host, Jay.
Welcome to episode number 29. What do we have on the mission monitor board for today, Jay?
Well, we're going to do a deep dive into one of Paul Levitz's earliest storylines in the second run on the Legion. We're going to focus on the redemption of Reep Daggle, the whole story about how he kind of, I don't want to say goes crazy when he finds out Brande is his father, then takes everybody to, and I know I'm going to mispronounce this multiple times, but I'm going to go with Khundia to start and hope that I stick with that. And God knows it's going to be tough. And then he loses his powers. He gets his powers back. We're going to talk all of that. And we have a very, very special guest today. So please, Derek, let us know who you are and where everybody would have heard of you.
G'day, everyone. I'm Derek Binns, and you can find me occasionally on the Legion of Substitute Podcasters or with my podcast buddy Brent. We do Tomorrow's Heroes Today as well. I am calling in today from Tasmania in Australia in the far distant future.
You're our official first-time traveler on our podcast, Derek. So welcome. Excellent. So where do you want to get started, Jay?
Well, I think the best way is just to start at the beginning and let's give a little background to how we get to where we are, right? So for anybody who's read all of these issues, this might be a little bit of recap, but I always like to make sure that anybody who's new to this at least has enough background information to get it. So the big part of this and the big thing that you need to know as this storyline begins, so as Jerry Conway is wrapping up his run on the Legion, DC decides to release this miniseries called Secrets of the Legion of Superheroes. And it's basically just, here's everybody's origin stories. And it's a really great 3-issue story if you don't know who they are and you want to find out who everybody is. And the premise of the story is RJ Brande is sick and they need somebody related to him to give him, I think it's a blood transfusion, which somehow still happens in the 30th century, but it's the 70s or the 80s. We don't ask. And the big surprise reveal at the end is that RJ Brande's son is Reep Daggle, is Chameleon Boy. So Brande is actually a Durlan. And then that kind of gets ignored for the end of the whole Conway and then Roy Thomas run. And Paul Levitz picks it up and just turns what could have been crap into a really good sandwich. I think we'll just go with that. And so we'll start with sort of what happens. It's very, very early on in Levitz's run. I mean, Giffen hasn't even joined the team yet. And the first moment we get, which is way back in Legion of Superheroes 286, is Reep is obviously not happy with Brande. He leaves this big party that they're having on Brande's private asteroid, and he takes 2 other Legionnaires, Shrinking Violet and Timberwolf, and they go to Khundia. Is that a good enough of a background? We're
Yeah, that's exactly where we're picking up. And yep. I think to further scope where we're kind of talking about in this, we're really talking about issue 286, the events that really start in 286. And this whole storyline really spans up until issue 301 of V2. And we're not going to go into every issue in great detail, but we're going to really talk about Cam's journey very specifically through that time frame. And then, so to your point, Jay, in 286, he for some reason, he seems very ill at ease with the fact that he just found out that RJ is his father. And he feels like he has this need to kind of prove himself almost. And he sets up this almost suicide mission into the heart of the enemy territory.
Yeah, I didn't read it as a proving himself. I read it as a running away. Like he was running away from his problems, right? And he's like, I'm going to put myself into, like, honestly, the worst possible situation I can think of. I'm going to drag 2 people who really don't deserve to be there along with me. And it's kind of just, I think he just doesn't want to deal with what's going on. Derek, do you have a different take or a same take on this?
I do not have a different take. I agree with you, Jay. I think that he is overreacting to the fact that he's Brande's son. I think it's irresponsible of him to take Colossal Boy, Shrinking Violet, and Timberwolf with him on his suicide-ish mission. I don't know if he's running away from the situation. He's definitely reacting to the situation. And it's probably that trope that, as soon as somebody figures out something about their background that they didn't really know, there's always some sort of story follow-on from that for them to get over the issue, basically. And that's what we're going to see over the next dozen or so issues.
Yeah.
It's very much a good example of the Paul Levitz ABC storyline. It starts off, and then over the next few issues, it just becomes a one-page thing to keep the plot boiling along till it culminates in 301, yeah.
Absolutely. And in fact, I think rash is a pretty good explanation of Cam's actions here, just because when you get into 287, the next issue, right, you see all these this lack of planning that shows itself in really, really bad ways. So he didn't plan on any cultural exchange information, right? So he has no idea what the Khundian culture is like at all. He doesn't even pack spacesuits for the team with regards to getting in and out of the planets. There was, he doesn't understand how to respond to challenges, anything else about that Khundian culture, about how they do things, and it ends up getting them in big trouble.
Yeah, I mean, they end up on Khund. They end up, they're in disguise. They're trying to fit in. The whole idea is this is a recon mission, because the issue before, Khund had attacked the United Planets spaceport to try to prevent them from building new ships. So now they're like, let's find out what the Khunds are up to. And you're exactly right, Jim. Like, there's no prep. He's not ready for this. He hasn't really explained anything. And I would kind of make the argument, like, Timberwolf might be the worst Legionnaire to bring on something like this. If you want somebody who's going to, like, intelligently sneak through a hostile situation. I mean, especially because this is also, Timberwolf has just had plastic surgery and has just had a massive personality change as well, just an issue earlier or 2 issues earlier. So, I mean, everything is just wrong from the get-go. They're walking down the streets of Khund, and then they bump into somebody who would end up actually becoming a pretty important villain over the next couple of years. And they end up in the challenge courts. So basically, if you offend somebody, if you end up, and what was it? He had to give the litany of apology, or some sort of like formal apology to this guy, and they don't, and they end up fighting for their lives. And if they lose, they die, and that's just how Khund is.
Yeah, it's very much a warrior society, isn't it?
Absolutely. And this is one of the, we talk about Levitz's just mastery of the craft here. There's so much world building in just this issue alone, that, and just little fun, short sentences, like the sentence from the Encyclopedia Galactica that says there's something wrong if you see a Khundian that's not carrying a weapon.
Yep.
Right? That's something to that effect. I can't remember the exact quote, but things like that really talk to Cam's lack of planning with regards to this. If they had some kind of even a fake weapon walking down the street, nobody would have cared, and none of this would have happened.
And all this coming from the leader of the espionage squad. He really should have been thinking more about this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like you mentioned, like all the world building happening in such a small amount of time. Like, this is only an 18-page story in issue 287 when they're on Khund. Like, it's not even a full length, because I think, like, this is the first time Giffen moves to do the main story, and I don't think they're ready to give him the 22 pages. They've got the backups, and they're also setting up Great Darkness Saga, which is coming down the pipe as well. Mm-hmm. So it is just full of tons of stuff about. Well, it's kind of funny because every time I say Khundia with this, I want to say Klingon, because this feels so much like every future Star Trek The Next Generation episode when they're on Klingon. And I'm not going to accuse one of stealing from the other, but like, I think of the one line in the description where they go like, Khundia is always dark because they're taught it's safer in the dark than in the light. And like, just these little lines that Levitz throws in, and you're like, we know exactly where we are. Yeah. And then the gambling starts. And then, I mean, it really is a masterclass of how to write, how to get a bunch of information to the reader and still do it in a really engaging way.
Yeah, very economically. Absolutely. Yeah. And then while this is all going on, back on Earth at Legion headquarters, everybody's freaking out. Garth is losing his mind because people are going against him as Legion leader. Ayla's freaking out because Bryn's disappeared, and she is desperate to get him back. So she approaches Imra to launch a rescue party, which she does with Colossal Boy.
Yeah, which, when you think about it, is a really odd choice, but it's, I mean, it's because Colossal Boy could get the ship, and because they weren't going to use a Legion cruiser.
Right.
Or it's Colossal Boy really wants to save Shrinking Violet. I mean, that might have been the other side part of it. But yeah, it's very much. So anyways, they end up fighting their way out of the court, and these two save them. And then we get the big moment where they crash into this frozen asteroid. And we get into, well, they kind of give you a little bit of information in the next issue, but just a couple of pages. And it's not until 289 where they really show what's going on. And they're on a frozen asteroid. Their flight rings don't work because the frost has gotten in and has messed everything up. And then we get new costumes. We finally get rid of the Saturn girl pink bikini, which
Damn it.
Yay.
which is good for some and bad for others. Timberwolf ends up in a new costume, which is probably the worst thing you can wear on a frozen planet because it's like. But I think Timberwolf changed costumes, about a dozen times during this run? That was just standard?
Something like that. I haven't counted.
Yeah, I don't know.
Now I have to go back and count.
And then we get sort of the two big subplots of this whole thing, one of which would end up playing out over the next 3 years and even longer. And the other one, I think they realized they made a horrible mistake and they dropped it really quickly. So the first one is the Colossal Boy, Shrinking Violet, beginning of that romance. And so let's just kind of lay the cards so that everybody who doesn't know, this isn't really Shrinking Violet, but nobody knew this at the time. Right? Big spoilers, as we spoil a 40-year-old comic. She's actually a Durlan. It's actually Yara. But we, of course, don't know that. We just think we finally see Colossal Boy, I mean, for lack of a better phrase, hitting on the Legionnaire he's had a crush on since how far back?
I don't even really remember if they've defined it very specifically. I don't remember. I don't know, Derek, if you remember.
I don't. I'm sorry, I don't.
Yeah. I mean, I always felt it was just like the regular trope of the kid who can grow super big, really liking the girl who can shrink, right? Or vice versa.
Yeah,
right? So
the opposites attracting.
Exactly. So that's all I thought it really was. And I think they might have, had little hints here and there, but I don't think it was a deep lore kind of thing that was.
Yeah, I had thought they had done something back in the 70s, like there had been a backup story or something like. Does that ring anybody?
Yeah, there was a couple stories where they were on a mission together in space, and there was just a little hint, but it wasn't like anything overt, right? At least I didn't take it as such.
Well, especially because she always was dating Duplicate Boy for the entire time, right? Or breaking Matter Eater Lad's heart. Like that was the other, right? I always love those callbacks to those Silver Age stories where you're like, this is horrible. Anyways, so, and then we get that one. And then the second one, which I don't know if I want to call it a misfire, but it was just a fascinating choice. And we're going to get into this. Timberwolf and Saturn Girl. Okay, I'm just going to ask this. What do you guys think happened on the asteroid between Timberwolf and Saturn Girl?
Derek, you're our guest, so I'll let you go first.
I honestly don't know. I reread it just in the last week. I still can't figure it out. I don't know if there is an actual romantic interlude that happens off panel or if it's just Bryn, because he's lost Ayla, is trying to comfort Imra because she's having problems with Garth. I honestly don't know which one it is.
Yeah, I felt a lot of dissonance in this here as well because and this is mainly in 288, 289 where these visuals happen and these things happen because it happens twice where Bryn takes Imra off to be kind of away from the main group. There's two things that come up here. In 287, when Imra I guess, initiates this rescue mission, she's talking to Ayla, and there's this really interesting moment where Imra rather, is very self-reflective and kind of feels like she doesn't measure up in her own ability to love her husband because she reaches into or detects Ayla's mind and she realizes how profound her love for Bryn is. And she doesn't feel that she's up to the task with Garth. So when we see what's happening on the moon, Imra kind of says something to that effect, basically saying that I've seen how much Ayla loves you, and I want to make sure that you're alive to be rescued, that kind of sentiment. But it's very weird in the way it happens, where they're kind of off on their own and hugging each other. I mean, I'm guessing it's more of a fraternal hug than anything romantic, but it sure is a weird juxtaposition of visuals versus text on the page.
Yeah, because as they're embracing, she says, "You'll always be my brother-in-law," sort of.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It seems like it's coming off as a more familial type of thing, but I don't know. Just the way it's presented makes me feel like something else may have happened in one of the other off-screen things. And then, when they get back and Garth finds out, there's all this antagonism between him and Imra. So he obviously thinks that something's happened.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, my headcanon when I was reading this was maybe because everybody's kind of at odds, everybody's grousing, especially Cam, justifiably, because, he basically caused the situation. I kind of felt like Bryn was taking Imra away from all the mental noise that was going on. That was kind of how I rationalized it in my own head while reading this. Like I said, who knows what was actually going on here.
Yeah, and I think that's the point. And I think that's something that really stands out in these issues, like comics up till this point. I mean, especially Legion of Superheroes, it's obvious. There's no subtlety in what they're doing, right? Like, I mean, I don't think anybody's reading the Jim Shooter issues going like, oh, wow, there's so much subtext to this. Like, it's this happens and this happens and this happens, because that was the style. Like, that was what they were doing. And this was the first, I mean, we're going to talk about this more as we get on this, but this is the first time where like the real soap opera-y Legion is coming to forefront. And also, I think they're purposefully making this as opaque as possible. I mean, like, these are heavily inked passages, so you don't really see their faces. And like you both pointed out, like, the dialogue doesn't match what you're seeing. Like, when she's saying, like, "Wow, I really hope you marry Ayla," while they're in this embrace, and you're like, okay, so is that just the weirdest pillow talk we've ever seen in our life, or like, what's going on? And yeah, the fact that Imra made this trip at all was, she's like, I looked into Ayla's heart and she loves you more than I love my husband. I had to go and save you. You know, it's kind of coming out of nowhere, but it's also this really weird juxtaposition of what we're seeing and what we're hearing. Whereas like the opposite with, okay, I know this is going to piss everybody off. I say Gim, and I'm sorry. And when we start talking about Colossal Boy, everyone's going to make fun of me because it's a G. So it's Gim. Sorry.
So, well, I'm just going to say this now, and we'll save the explanation for this when we have our next episode, which is our spotlight on Colossal Boy. I've actually come around. I'm okay with anybody who says Jim or Gim, and that's fine. But I will give my explanation next episode.
So, I was ready to start a whole little thing of like, and Derek, you can be with me on this one. Americans don't know how to pronounce English anyways, right? Australian,
You're not wrong.
You're not wrong. Fellow member of the who learned English from England. So now every American's going to email, you suck. So it's a joke. It's a joke. It's so obvious with, Colossal Boy and Shrinking Violet. They're not hiding that. That's very, very in your face. We know what's going on. But with, Timberwolf and Saturn Girl, it's not. And I think it's purposefully left that way. And I think there is a later issue, tell me if I'm wrong here, where they basically say, like, no one's going to believe us even if we say nothing happened. Or they kind of insinuate that because I think Ayla has sort of made up her mind. So as we sort of jump forward, like, they are rescued off the asteroid by Ayla and Dawnstar. And the first thing Ayla sees is Saturn Girl and Timberwolf hugging. And so, of course, she does not respond well to that.
Worst timing ever.
Yeah. But it's an interesting twist, especially because, and this is my next question, can anybody think of a time where they put a barrier between Saturn Girl and Lightning Lad before this? Like, they've always just been the couple, right? There's never been she even turned down Superman in that one Silver Age story where Supergirl's looking for the perfect person to date Superman, and they go, how about Saturn Woman? And she's like, I'm married to Lightning Man, I think, at that point. So they've always just been the couple, right?
Yeah, until you get to the reboot.
Yeah. And reboot and after, it just seems like it's just been the standard, like, how do we screw this up? But they were the couple that were and there was never anything shown to kind of break them. And I think, again, I will probably say soap opera a dozen times on this episode, but like, this is the first of, like, we're throwing curveballs. We're getting more drama. We're, nothing's safe.
I wrote in my notes here that I was taking. So starting in issue 288, I put in big capital letters, I put super soap, because this is where we're really getting it heavy when this episode, when this issue starts. This 288, 289, it is thick.
Well, I think just how many times did a Legionnaire cry before Levitz took over the second time? Whereas every single issue, somebody's, like, whether it's Garth, whether it's RJ Brande, everybody's crying. And I'm like, yep, we're in the 80s. Like, we're in the, let's get the emotions going here. Or maybe Giffen just likes drawing that. Yeah, in the Silver Age, there were no emotions.
When Triplicate Girl's body got killed, she just went, oh, that's all right. I've still got another one. When Pharaoh Lad sacrificed himself, it was all how noble, but nobody was upset about it.
Yet if they were offended by like some small thing, they'd be like, oh, choke.
Yes, gotta love a choke.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Or a smack, right? So how dare you, whack, and then we solve everything with violence in comics. Come on. All right, so we get to that. They get off the island, or not the island. Sorry, I've gone to Gilligan's Island there. So is this the point where I should apologize?
On an island.
Yeah, I wish. This is the point where I will apologize to everybody for the number of times I said the Eclipso Project last episode, and all of my numerous speaking mistakes and problems and errors. So if you aren't used to that by now, I'm sorry. Okay, so they get off the asteroid, they get back home, and now we get that, hey, Chameleon Boy is going to face consequences. And like kind of go with this. How many consequences did Brainiac 5 face when he almost destroyed the universe?
Which time?
Yeah, right.
Well, let's say Omega. What would you say, Derek? What was the length of the punishment?
Well, probably because he ended up saving the day at the end. Everyone went, oh, well, at least he made up for it by doing that. But yeah, no punishments, anything like that. No.
Well, he went crazy as well, so they were quite happy to throw him in. That was his punishment, right? And then Ultra Boy supposedly murdered someone, and it took them 5 years to resolve that. Is it?
I don't know if it's 5 years, but it was the storyline when they revisited it took a while before they got back to it, for sure.
Yeah. And then I'm trying to think of other horrible things the Legion has done that they never faced any issues for.
Well, I mean, and Starboy did actually face some consequences for his particular situation. So definitely want to make sure we call that out.
Oh yeah, sorry. He lost membership in the Legion for murdering someone. Yes, that was the punishment.
Minor details, come on.
It's like,
so, but yeah,
I'm sending you to talk.
Oh, I was just going to say, but yeah, I mean, Cam, as soon as he gets back, he basically lawyers up, right? As soon as he gets back from this particular trip. Meanwhile, the Great Darkness Saga is happening all in the background.
So, I just want to call this out, and it's one thing that I loved during the reread of this. When he lawyers up, and this is like Giffen at his, like, I'm sci-fiing this up as much as I can, and that alien lawyer, like, there is no humanoid anything. And like, you always try to explain like how big of a shift it was when Giffen takes over. And like, this is one of those little things where gone are the, like I didn't mind the horse head guy in the spaceport from Broderick, but like, like suddenly he's drawing like, non-humanoid aliens, which was great. And I love the fact the alien is just like, yeah, they want you in jail. Like they're going for blood. Like, you're screwed, kid. I'm sorry.
There's nothing I can do for you.
That's right.
And even Cam's like, what about my past? And they're like, don't care. Nobody cares.
Yeah, that's nice. See you in jail.
And then he ends up in jail. They don't actually show the trial. They just end up, he's just in jail.
Yeah. I was a bit peeved that they didn't show the trial, or at least something in the trial. Yeah. If it's going to lead to this point where he's going to, without spoilering something 40 years old, be imprisoned on Takron Galdos, I would have liked at least a summing up or something like that.
No, that's a great point, because when you watch any kind of lawyer show, Law and Order here in the States, it's always the sentencing. That's the big dramatic part, right? When the judge says, no, you're guilty, you're off to jail right now. That's the big dramatic part in any of those kind of melodramas, right?
Well, I think part of it is they're in the middle of the Great Darkness Saga. So to take out a page of, I mean, I guess you probably could have taken out the page where he's meeting the attorney and still could have had a great silent final page of him just walking, getting the bindings put on, and then he's put on the transport and he's got armed SPs all around him. And like, that's all you need to show, like,
yeah, I mean, not to try to rewrite this or anything, but I think
I'm going to rewrite the Great Darkness Saga.
Yeah, but having a scene where one of your heroes is thrown in jail just as the universe is going to hell is makes it a very dramatic moment versus talking to a lawyer who's gonna be like, nope, sorry, can't help you, buddy.
And we've had the return of Computo just before that as well.
That's right.
It's been all action for the Legion, and that has one of my favorite things in there, where Legion HQ is in lockdown and the Legion of Substitute Heroes have turned up to try and help, and one of the SP guys says, no, you're not getting through, not even if you're a Legion of Super Pets. I mean, that really puts the subs in their place, doesn't it?
Yep, and we'll get back to them later, because I think we have a visit by one of them later in this particular stretch. So let's get back to Cam in the Slammer. So Cam's there, he's all muscled up now, he has tats all over his arms and with a teardrop on his eye. No, that's the wrong story, sorry about that. That's no, he's fighting off some of these other guys in prison. That's what he's doing.
Well, it's all their Durlans, right? Like, it's just a big Durlan fight. He's taken over the gang, right? So it's you joke about the tats and whatever, but he's kind of
what is that guy Durlan? So I'm sorry, I didn't see that one.
And I remember as a kid not thinking anything of that, and as an adult, I was like, really? Like, they wouldn't put him in his own safe place on Takron Galdos? Like, nope. He's like, hey, you're an ex-Legionnaire. Everybody here literally wants to kill you. Let's just put you in General Pa. Good luck. Yeah. Like, you got no powers, nothing. And there are some Levitts, we'll just say, issues with how he writes the police and punishment, but this would be one of them. And then we get the weird twist where he's on Tacron Galtos and he's going up against a Daxamite. Like when Darkseid takes over Daxam and sends everybody off to go basically destroy the universe, one of them ends up, or sorry, am I jumping too far ahead? I
wanted to call out one other thing. So I mean, this is weird, right? Because I didn't realize there's like a bunch of Durlans that look just like Cam in this prison, which is kind of odd, assuming that's what they are. But I just wanted to point out as well that RJ comes to visit him.
Sorry, yes, yep.
Right. And this is actually important just because this is where you kind of get that reconciliation between Reep and RJ. Yeah, since that's what's kind of the split or the friction between them is what kind of started this mess to begin with. Now we kind of come full circle to, not full circle, but we at least come to a point where they come back together and reconcile to at least move forward.
What'd you think of this scene?
I enjoyed it. I like it. I thought it was good. I thought it was something that needed to be addressed, and I'm glad they did it.
Yeah, I guess I wish. I mean, it's yet another scene of Brande crying about like how, you know, why won't you talk to me? Like, why won't you do this? But I kept waiting for like it would have been nice to see Brande maybe apologize once. Like, hey, yeah, like maybe I should have done this, or maybe I could have done things differently. Like any sort of self-reflection. Like it was just, to me, it read more like, why didn't you talk to me? Why aren't you doing what I want? And Cam just kind of rode with it. And this is probably like 2026 knowledge of, you know, gaslighting and all those other funny terms. Whereas in the 80s, it's like, just forgive your dad. Everything's good. I guess I would have liked to have seen Cam just be like, and we don't get that until 301, where he actually starts talking about like, this is how much this hurt. And this is what I learned. And it would have been nice to have that. But it was a good, I agree. It was a good scene. 2026 me wishes there was maybe a little bit more. Kid me when I read it was fine.
Yeah. It's pretty much all RJ doing an info dump. He's got all the dialogue. Cam's got a small amount of dialogue. And then Cam's the one who goes and embraces RJ in the last panel. So it should have been more of a two-way dialogue.
Yeah, I agree with that. There was definitely more him saying, you know, I can't believe you're here. And, you know, and I wish you would have asked to help. But, you know, to your point, Jay, I think we're in the middle of the Great Darkness Saga. So they're, you know, to Derek's earlier point, this is kind of a C plot, maybe a B plot at this point from Levitz's perspective. So they're only going to spare so many pages for it.
Oh, right? Exactly. I would not expect this to be a 5-page scene of, especially when they're in the middle of something gigantic. I think it's just more, like I say, I think it's more knowing what you know now, or maybe, I mean, it's like, I noticed this whenever I reread these, especially the ones that I read when I was a kid, and everything hits differently. Like obviously when you're 12, it's going to hit differently than when you're 22 or 32. So you kind of maybe ask for a little bit more. I think RJ Brande just gets off easy. I'm just going to say this for this entire storyline. Like he kind of, he never says like, yeah, I was kind of a dick. Like I knew you were my son the whole time and I was right beside you and didn't say anything. Like kind of like that would have been a nice, just for him to say, you know, maybe I screwed this up. And I would have liked to see Cam go like, yeah, you need to do stuff. Like this just isn't cool. Like
you suck as a dad.
Yeah. Like, well, and then Brande kept saying like, you know, like I just want to be a father. And I'm like, you've never been a father. Like, sorry, maybe these are my daddy issues coming up, and this is therapy for me right now. So we're just, it's the Long Live the Legion therapy podcast.
You better leave me something in your will, Dad.
No, I mean, I was okay. I mean, headcanon me went through here and it's like, okay, this is it's 2 pages. And, you know, these kind of moments are never comfortable when you have these weird unresolved feelings. So I could see this, right? I could see this being in its own way true.
Yep.
You know?
No, I agree. Of course, we can't keep Cam a villain forever. So he gets his redemption arc now. And the redemption arc starts first by saving Tacron Galtos from a crazy Daxamite who doesn't know how to use his powers. And shall we just say that, and actually takes Cam's powers away? Like, are we reading that as like the radiation from the X-ray vision messed with him, or should we just leave it as who knows what happened?
I think that's what they say towards the end of it when they actually go to Durla, that he was exposed to the Daxamite kids' radiation.
Yeah. Old Veer was not in Tacron Galtos, right? He actually just swept in and kind of started wrecking the place, is how I read that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And that was interesting how Cam basically leveraged his training from Karate Kid to be able to kind of get the best of him. So that was a neat little beat, even though it was a very much a C plot, 1-2 page kind of thing.
Yeah, but it's one of those great signs of like if you're Levitz and you're like, I got 22 characters at least, I got to show everybody and I got to keep this plot going because I know we're going to get the next step of a redemption, and then I'm assuming he's got the next year and a half planned out at this point. Like this isn't guesswork for him. Like I'm guessing he knows where he's going. So Cam saves Takron Galtos, and then at the end of the Great Darkness Saga, we get this great moment where they go, "Hey, cool, you were a hero again. Hey, you're free. We're going to let you go. We're not going to worry about anything else you've done. Go home.
Cool. We cool.
Yeah." Which was just I don't know. I mean, like considering they wanted him punished and they were so angry at him literally 6 issues earlier, wouldn't they? Well, I mean, again, nitpicky on the logic of this, but anyways, he gets out. He's free, but he doesn't have any powers anymore. Like he's now stuck in his body, and we eventually get to issue 301. So after the big anniversary, and we get the trip to Durla, and I believe this is the first time we see the Durlans in the cloaks and I don't want to say tentacles, but basically without faces. Does that sound right, or is my timeline off?
I think so. This is, I think, where we get that classic purple robe look.
Wait, it's the Legion, so there has to be a purple robe.
Yeah, exactly.
Derek, can you think of another? Am I missing something?
So I wasn't buying Legion at this point. So my first experience with Durlans was Invasion. So that's a few years later on. And then they were definitely purple robed up.
Yeah. Yeah. By the time we get into the late 80s, early 90s, and Giffen has just said, like, this is how Durlans look and this is the design. So I think this is the first one. And I mean, this issue is a gigantic info dump about Durla. Like we talked about before when we're getting everything about Khundia. So we're getting the 6-minute war, all the nuclear fallout, all the radiation, everything that happened. And I think some of that had been in the past. I don't think all of this is new. Trying to remember from my rereads of Silver Age Durlan stories. But I thought it was fascinating, like the way they did this, because it didn't feel like the Khundia episodes felt like we were reading Klingon, but this doesn't feel like anything else. Was this similar to either of you for like another sci-fi trope?
I have come across things that are similar, but they were written after this. There's a few things in Doctor Who. In one of the Doctor Who episodes, there's a race called the Argolans, who were pretty much decimated in a minute-long nuclear exchange with another planet. And then in one of the Doctor Who novels that was published before Doctor Who came back in 2005, there was and I think it was a 6-minute war between Earth and Mars. The Martians dropped a rock on Paris and decimated Paris, and Earth retaliated and they pretty much wiped out Mars in 6 minutes, sometime in their 22nd century. So I don't know about before, but definitely after.
Yeah, I got a vibe of Omega Man in some ways. If you ever saw the old Charlton Heston movie, which I guess Will Smith made a homage. It's not exactly the same story, but it's
based on a book, right?
Yeah.
I Am Legend.
I Am Legend, right? And I got it's not obviously the same, but similar thing where you have an apocalypse happen and the folks change. And I got the vibe here of that. So it's not exactly the same thing for obvious reasons, but Cam and RJ being kind of the only the protagonists that we're following. So the folks that we're trying to keep alive, being surrounded by all these other threats and things like that was kind of at least as far as Durla is concerned, right? And this is another good example of how good the world building is here, because we get a lot of information about how Durla is, how it comes to be, this notion of this tribal structure of the Durlan society, things like that.
Yeah, the only thing I could think of Legion-wise that they'd done before is I thought like that old issue where the guy comes back to life after the nuclear war, and they said like Earth's World War VII or whatever was like 6 minutes or. But I think, I mean, I'm completely grasping at straws to try to find a connection here. No, everything you said, Jim, I agree with. Like, again, the world building is great. You really get a sense of what Durla is. And let's call it, I mean, Giffen's artwork on this. I mean, he does desolation as well as anybody. And it's, and this is not a pretty place that you want to go visit. We'll put it that way. And the fact that they get to wander around, the fact that you get to see like a Durlan execution where they put them in a bubble and drop them into a radioactive stew, basically. The final fight after, again, we're spoilering everything. After Cam gets his powers back, everything is just done really, really well. Like it's just such a tightly done issue. You get a story in one issue, which remember those good old days when like comics could be told and it wasn't written for 6. And it's just a nice, and again, like the dialogue between him and Brand for the whole thing. This is where I think it really works because they actually talk to each other. They actually get moments where they're sharing with each other. And again, I think the over-under on Verdamped was 2.5 on this one, 3.5. That's my favorite RJ Brande curse. It's like, we got to get off this Verdamped planet. And I don't know where it came from, but I love it. I love whenever Brande says that for some crazy reason. And then we end up, he's back in the Legion, no problem. And that's kind of the funny thing by 3, Karate Kid's wedding. And he's part of Annual 2 and no repercussions.
Everything all worked out fine.
Yeah, exactly. So, and Timberwolf never talks about this again. There's never any anger. Colossal Boy doesn't, because Colossal Boy ends up married. So he's obviously not pissed off by this. It's again, it's that great, like, you create all that stress, and then once it's done, hey, season's over. We're going to ignore that, and we're moving on to the next stories that we're going to go. So let's just kind of talk about, for this whole thing, and we've done a really high level kind of explanation of what happened. I just want to so Derek, let's start with you. What's your impression of all of this? Like, what do you think really works well in this? And let's focus kind of on just the Chameleon Boy parts, because that's what we've talked about. What works well? And then after that, we'll talk about what didn't work. So what's the highlight for you?
So what worked well? I liked the Durla issue. So it all worked well towards going to a point of resolution. We get a very nice resolution story. I always love Giffen's art. The way he can just fill a panel just amazes me every time I see it. So highlight for that. Reading it with a modern eye, I think it could have been tightened up. But then, as we've been saying, we've got Great Darkness going on as well. So technically, this is the background story to Great Darkness, as well as what's happening on Orlando with Jackie and Karate Kid. So it takes, I think I read 13 issues over the last week to get to that point where, some of them, it was only a half a page of Chameleon Boy stuff in there. So I think I would have liked it to be tightened up, but what are you going to do? You can't go back and change that. You can't re-edit and that. So I'm content with what it was. But yeah, if it was written today, it would have been 6 issues, 4 issues, just of a Chameleon Boy arc with maybe a couple of references to something else that was happening in the background to lead into the next arc, maybe. If I'm going to give it a mark out of 10, I'm going to give it a 7 for the whole thing.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I mean, I think you make a good point. It is such a perfect example of an old style of comic publishing. Like that, I keep always saying like they're essentially Marvelizing the Legion, but that Marvel long extended storylines and dragging stuff out because you want people to come back and keep buying the comics, right? And that just doesn't exist today. And I think you're 100% right. This would be a 6-issue story. The first issue would be them going to Khundia. By the 6th issue, he'd be getting his powers back, and it would probably be called The Trial of Chameleon Boy, and there'd be one issue of just him on trial and everyone saying like, yeah, I've always hated you, and and there'd be the xenophobic Durlan suck part of this. But yeah, great points. Jim, what do you think?
I agree with a lot of what Derek said. As far as what I really liked, I think, we talked about this earlier from the writing perspective. The world building here is just amazing. These kind of stories that Levitz writes. If I want to see how to do a good world building issue or add text into a story, this is how I do it, because it's done very economically, and it just provides a lot of detail in few words. It's just really amazing. I don't think we get this level of world building until Abnett and Lanning come up with the stuff in Legion Worlds. It's that much of a I guess it's that deep of a good lesson in world building. Other than that, I think, especially in issue 301, I really liked 301 the most out of all of these, just because we get a little bit more in depth with RJ and Reep. There's a couple of really nice exchanges with them, with the both of them, where especially where Reep, they get out of that toxic soup and Cam is kind of opening himself up a little bit and talking about his dreams of who he is. I wrote a note down here that says Cam is full of dreams and insecurity. So he's talking about how he wanted to do all these things, but he wasn't really sure about himself in a lot of ways until he kind of proved himself as a Legionnaire. I thought that was really nice. I thought it gave a lot of depth to somebody. Again, very economically. This just happens over the course of a couple pages, and it's just really well done. I really liked it.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything both of you said. I'm going to throw in a couple more things that I loved, because I think the three main issues of this storyline, so like 287 when they go to Khund, 289 when they're on the asteroid, and then 301 when he gets his powers back. I think those are just three top-notch issues. And I agree, Derek, like it does drag on, and it would have been nice. Like, I think if they had wrapped it all up in say like 298, that might have it just would have been a little bit more concise, a little bit tighter. And again, he's juggling 60 things while he's writing this, but like, when you talk about the world building when they go to Khundia, and this is Giffen's first full-length issue, and it's not even full-length, it's 18 pages, first main story issue for the Legion, and he's knocking it out of the park. Like, Khund looks so cool, and the costume designs are so good, and he's hitting it. And then when they get on the asteroid, you feel how cold and how horrible. And then we start getting the real Giffen, like 9-panel grid, 12-panel grid. Like, it's a heavy issue for not like, there's not a ton going on, but it's like, he's not wasting space. Like, they're getting to this. And again, like the change in Cam between these three issues, right? Like when he's on Khund, he's kind of like, hey, yeah, I know what I'm doing, but he doesn't. Like, he's making mistakes. And then when they're on the asteroid, he's like, I'm sorry. But he still has time to go like, yeah, Colossal Boy, I think you're fine. Like, you finally get to hit on Shrinking Violet. Like, yeah, stop complaining. And I love that little bit because they've been friends forever, right? So like, he knows his buddy isn't too sad that they're stuck there. And then when we get 301, and you guys have both said it, like the scenes between him and Brand are just so well done. Really like those. So I'm going to ask this. What would you say didn't work? Or what would we've kind of nitpicked a few things, but is there anything aside from it kind of goes on a little bit too long? Is there anything where you said like, yeah, that didn't really work for me? Or we just didn't, normally 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, we're like, it's all good. Just what do we think?
I think what we've already highlighted before, the trial never happened on screen. The pardoning at Takron Galtos was all a bit hand-wavy. More depth could have been given into those parts. We don't really get a look at Cam's despair at being in prison. I think they're probably the main ones where it doesn't work as well as it could have done.
I love that comment on despair. We didn't get the despair in prison. We got the fight, but we didn't really get. Yeah, that's great. I didn't even think of that. That's a great call.
Yeah, we got a little bit of it when he kind of breaks down at the final panel, but it's not enough, right? It's not nearly enough for kind of what we need. But mine, I agree with everything because a lot of this came up as part of the discussion. The other thing that I noted on my read here that didn't really work for me, which is kind of funny because it's at the very, very beginning of this, is in 286 when they have that initial moment of RJ and Reep talking, out in the meadow or wherever it was. I don't feel like Levitt sold Reep's issues with the fact that he had issues with RJ. He's just like, I don't like this, I'm out of here. And then he has a big chip on his shoulder that he uses to start this whole domino effect of bad things happening. I just didn't feel like that was sold as well as the rest of these things that happened over the course of this. So I really felt a little bit more around the character's emotions when Cam was in prison, even though it wasn't that much. 301, it really hit. It was really good dialogue that reflected the states of mind of both RJ and Reep. And in 286, I got where Reep was from a headspace, but I didn't really get the fact that Cam was bothered by the situation as much as he really was. It was just kind of, I'm out of here. And then curiously, he got to Earth really fast. I just want to say that he got home really quickly when all the stuff started happening with Dr. Regulus on the planetoid there. And then he's back at Earth, Shanghaiing Vi and Timberwolf there all of a sudden. So anyway.
Sorry, I got to ask. You got where Brand's headspace was, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, because you'd said you got Reep's headspace, but you didn't get Cam's, and I'm like,
oh, I'm sorry.
My split personality. No. We all make these mistakes. That's why I like to ask, because I was like, because this is one of the toughest parts about talking about Chameleon Boy is that he's Cam in so many conversations. Like we don't use Reep that much.
Yeah.
No, that's perfect. And I agree with you. They needed like a moment in 286 of Cam turning and going like, "You're not my dad. Like, screw off." Like, just like that's all they needed. Something petulant or something like he's a kid. Let him be a kid and be like, "I don't know you. Like, we're not going to have a relationship." And then and that's all you need.
Or even just have one panel with a thought bubble that describes his internal anguish or internal angst about the situation. Right. That's all I'm asking.
But not going back to it every time. Like when the X-Men would have something happening and every time you go back to that character, it'd be, I'm so bemoaning my fate of whatever my fate is. Yes. Next issue, I'm still bemoaning my fate.
Yes. I just want to drink beer and be left alone and I hate everybody. And it's like, okay.
Every comic is somebody's first.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I again, great points from both of you. I think it was, and I agree. I think they maybe just a little bit more depth on Cam's side, and I think it would have worked. It would have worked better for me. But again, like what really stands out for me on this is, to me, like this is where you just start seeing Levitz doing what he would become famous for, right? Like he's like, okay, here's the A plot, the B plot, the C plot. We're going to have overly emotional characters at probably almost every level, right? Like Ayla isn't just sad that Bryn's gone. She's going up to Imra like, please bring him back. I can't. And I'm like, you're a Legionnaire, go do something. But they needed to have her, like her personality is taken to the extreme. And then, like I said, I mean, I've joked about this before. Brand is crying every single issue. It's that heavy 80s melodrama that I mean, for everyone who thinks that it's sappy, this is what sold. Like, this is what fans wanted to read at the time. Like, people were done with that Silver Age, like straight face, stoic, I am Superman, everything's good. Everybody wanted to see their characters actually feel emotions, because then you actually cared about what happened to them, right? And it's Levitz ramping it up to 11. And then another great thing that I'm going to call out here, and we're going to get off, we'll stop talking about the Chameleon Boy storylines. When they split into the 4 teams that go off to search, right? And you've got Phantom Girl and Starboy, and it's kind of obvious they don't really like each other, and Phantom Girl really doesn't want to be on a ship with Starboy because Starboy's super depressing and like, oh, there's his character, and he's like, we're never gonna find him. Like, do you know how big the universe is? Like, this is, and Phantom Girl's just like, will you shut up, please? And it's, you hadn't seen that in Legion before. And then you've got the Sunboy block scene where they're on the Yucatan. What is it? Yucatan 6 or whatever it is, a planetoid, Yucatan 7. And first we find out that Block can sense telepathic rocks anywhere, which I don't think ever came back as a power again. But the two of the, like Sunboy immediately understanding they've interrupted honeymooners and they're going to get reamed out for it, and Block having no clue what's going on. Levitz is just, here's character work. Here's these characters. And I really wanted to call that out. Like that, forget about the Chameleon Boy stuff. Everything else is just, these are different people. They are not just teamwork or, teammates who immediately come together and kind of want to hang out. They might not get along, right? I don't think Dawnstar and Lightlass had anything in common, and I don't think they really wanted to talk to each other. But just nice bits there.
And then we get Dreamgirl as Legion leader.
Yes.
And that's not a popular decision amongst the other Legionnaires. Element Lad quits as deputy. Starboy is always on the defensive for every decision she makes. Yeah.
Ultra Boy's mad. Element Lad quit. Like, and that's the thing, is they're creating these separations, right? He's creating these like little, little personality bits. We're also seeing all the stuff in the background that would become keystone of this. The Dungeons and Dragons playing in the background.
I made a note about that, and I'm seriously wondering if like TSR had some kind of deal going on with these guys, because it is mentioned so often in this Levitz run. It's just kind of funny.
I think it's like the modern day creators where they just mention the names. They're hoping they're going to get a paycheck, but it's like, or they're just genuinely fans. They're like, this would be cool. But I think it's, it's just one of those where I think they said, how do we make these characters more real? How do we make them more relatable? And that's what we like about this. Like they start to become people, right? Like, and then we get the great, the next thing I kind of wanted to talk about as we'll kind of move into the next one is like the repercussions of this storyline and the repercussions of what happens, right? So the obvious one is Colossal Boy gets married to not the person that he thinks, and that would keep going for like, it stays with the retro boot. I wouldn't be shocked if they, for the relaunch this year, like if they're written in their 20s, I wouldn't be shocked if he's still married then.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. Can we think like what else would you say are like the repercussions of this storyline? Because we just joked there's nothing for Chameleon Boy. He's kind of fine and everybody forgives him. But is there anything else you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think from this particular arc of Chameleon Boy, very specifically, I think this year and a half worth of issues is kind of self-contained in that respect. But like you kind of were pointing out here, a lot of stuff is happening in the background. The big thing is the Great Darkness Saga. But there's other things here too, like for example, in issue 301, I believe this is where Gigi Kuzumano gets introduced, right?
Yep,
so
yep.
She's a new character and she stays around for a long time.
Yeah, we get her. Well, I mean, if we're going to include the whole bit of it, of course, Legion Annual is when Siobhan Aaron officially becomes the Legion
liaison.
The Legion liaison. We get, I mean, the big one is the breakup of Light Lass and Timberwolf.
Okay, let me pause on this one because I'm going to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole here because this always drives me nuts. And I guess I get that Levitz was going through and just wanted to shake things up. So where Dawnstar finds the Lost Legionnaires is 289. 2 issues prior, you see, oh my gosh, Ayla is so deeply in love with Bryn. I can't even believe it. I'm not this much in love with my own husband. Oh my God. And then as soon as Ayla sees Bryn hugging Imra, she's like, nope, I'm out. That was just very, very strange to me. I'm sorry.
Well, I thought it was more post Great Darkness Saga. And she was like, the Legion wrecks people. It wrecks lives. It wrecks us. And for the entire time Timberwolf had been in the Legion, he had always said, I'm only here because of you. I don't really want to be a Legionnaire. I'm here because I love you. And then when she finally says, hey, then let's leave. You come with me to, I will say, Winath. And then everyone can tell me I'm wrong. And he's like, nope, I'm a Legionnaire first. And I think that was more of the big twist there. Derek, you're the third person. You can tell us which one's right. Nope. No pressure.
It's obviously Winath.
Answer.
Yeah.
Yes. Our guests are always correct. We don't argue that way.
I got nothing on Ayla and Bryn's breakup. It just sort of comes out of nowhere. I'm guessing that Levis just wanted to get Light Lass off the board for a while and maybe give Timberwolf some more depth to his personality that wasn't just grr, arg, / Yeah.
I am the lone wolf.
Yeah. I am not a fan of Light Lass. I am a big fan of Lightning Lass, but I find Light Lass to be a bit on the insipid side, but that's just me.
No. She was so badly written until, I mean, I think you can say until volume 3. And when we talk about her in the future, when she gets her own episode, it's going to be a rough one because like, it's going to be
Can't wait.
What are the highlights of the Silver Age? Well, one of the highlights is she looked enough like a boy that nobody knew she wasn't her brother. I agree with you. Like, and she needed a personality transplant desperately. And I think he did as well. And I think this was the way Levitz said, let's figure this out. Like, let's go. And I think you're right. He just took her off the board for a bit to let her go home and then he could give her powers back. Because, like, honestly, the only person who's been able to write Light Lass with Light Lass's powers correctly is Mark Waid. Like, he's the only one who figured that one out and was like, okay, this is actually, we can do stuff with this. But, like, even when she was Gossamer and that was painful. And then just Spark. Whereas, Spark was, we're turning into this. But yes, Light Lass was a badly written character and they needed to change her.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with Light Lass is that she was pretty much defined by the fact that she was Bryn's girlfriend, right? Yeah, that's not really a great look. It's not a great thing for a hero. And whereas Bryn was, he could still do, Timberwolf things. So he was actually still fun to watch and read and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, Ayla at that phase had really nothing that interesting about her.
Well, even worse, she was Bryn's girlfriend and Garth's sister. She was never just Ayla. Like, she was never just, here's this character. She's always, this is the twin sister of the more important person. And this is the girlfriend of the character who looks like Wolverine. And maybe we should start pushing him a little bit. Like, it's, so yeah, she's gonna struggle with that. And I think the other one, not a lot of the female characters that, were handled incredibly well in the 70s anyways. So it's not a shock she got the short stick. We'll go with that. What else would we say would be sort of a repercussion out of this? Phantom Girl and Shadowlass hating Timberwolf. That's another one that came out of this. Justifiably so, and that was a great scene. It's another part of Timberwolf's personality change, which is why he ends up hanging out with Block all the time, which was a great reward. Lightning Lad's not wanting to be a Legionnaire anymore. That kind of drove him off the team.
And Projector and Karate Kid on Orlando.
Yes.
Yeah. Of course, their wedding is the next issue.
Yep. Right. 302. Yep.
Yeah. Or the big annual 2.
Or annual 2. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So, I made a note about that very particular. I also made a note interesting about Garth because, we get to 289, and by the way, we really didn't talk much about this, but the cover of 289 is probably one of the most iconic Legion of Superheroes covers ever, right? 'Cause that's the Cold and Lonely Corner of Hell cover. But Garth is so out of sorts in this issue. It kind of came to me that Garth is like obsessed about it doesn't really show itself overtly, but Garth is absolutely obsessed with being as good of a leader as the other two founders. And he's super upset by the fact that he's not. And so this is, driving a lot of this behavior and future behavior as we, get through the end of this particular run.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, and especially the knowledge that he's not, because his entire leadership, we'll just say, has been bad upon bad upon bad. When you go back and reread it, you kind of feel sorry for him. Like, man, you just got, this is rough. Yeah. This is rough.
Sometimes characters are written to be set up for a fall. Another one would be Polar Boy when he is leader leading up to the Magic Wars.
Absolutely.
It's obviously, he's the kid who was always a Legion fan. He's now a Legionnaire. He's now a Legion leader. Nothing works out for him from that point on.
That's a great parallel. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, that's good. So, and it's kind of funny, like when we talk about the leaders, we get, and you mentioned it early on in the podcast, like Dream Girl becomes leader because she wins the fan vote, right? Like that more people, it's one of those things I really hope they bring back with the new Legion, because it's a tradition that I think is awesome. Like, just say, all right, fans, like, you get to vote who the leader of the team is going to be. Because I would one of the questions I would love to ask Paul Levitz is like, so when did you know Dream Girl was going to be the leader, and how much did that change the Great Darkness Saga? Because I'm sure that is not where you wanted to go with this. And I think Polar Boy was another one. Like, I don't think anybody would have picked Polar Boy as the leader, but the fans picked him. And then suddenly you get great stories. And same with Dream Girl. And with Lightning Lad, he gets picked. And I think the writers were like, yeah, let's not make him as perfect as we remember Cosmic Boy and Saturn Girl being. And let's see how that affects him. I'm trying. The Dream Girl one just still breaks my brain a little bit when you think about that. Like, I'm trying to think of like another comic parallel of like a creative team. Like, let's say like at Claremont and Byrne's highest peak, or Claremont and Cockrum when the X-Men is just firing in the 80s. If suddenly they'd said it's like, the new leader of the team and the person who you have to revolve all of your stories around is Banshee. Knock yourself out. And I think they just would have been like, what? And it's like, yeah, sorry, like, you got to use this character. Or I don't know, I'm trying to think of their, like, and everybody who loves Banshee, don't yell at me. I was just picking like somebody who wasn't on the team at the time. But like, I'm trying to think of like like Dream Girl was literally the person who got picked because they never used her and she was so ignored. And the fans were just like, can we see more of her? What would be like the Justice League and your leader is Bulleteer?
Firestorm?
Yeah. Firestorm at least has powers that people respect. Like, I'm trying to think of...
Oh, okay.
Like, because like Dream Girl, like even with her powers, people were like, she's useless.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's one that kind of lines up.
Yeah.
Gypsy.
Except you can't call her that anymore. Everybody gets pissed off when you say that name. Every time I see a posting on Reddit and they just say the character's real name, and I'm like, who is this? And then like, oh, that's right. I'm not allowed to say this name anymore. I'm an old man. It's Gypsy. I don't care. But I'm going to get so many angry emails from this one. That's my goal today. All right.
No, that's Jay. That's Jay talking.
Yes, that's me. That's Jay. Yes. All right. Jim, what's next? Have we missed anything on this? I mean, I think we've
so there's
covered
one
a ton.
other thing I wanted to call out here, because this kind of talks to us, one of the things we talked about last episode, which was our spotlight on Chameleon Boy. And again, this is in issue 301, but we get to see our old friend 42 again for a page in this particular issue, who, as we know, well, I guess Chameleon Boy's familiar, as we kind of see in this page, Pet doesn't really fit because he's a fully sentient being, and apparently he's becoming a very talented photographer or videographer, however we want to refer to them in this particular scenario. But yeah, and then kind of along with that, our friend Alan Williams pinged us on the Discord today about Prody being Cam's pet. With regards to the other super pets, what does that make the rest of them? Comet, Beppo, Streaky, Crypto. They all have sentient thoughts. Yeah, is super pets just kind of this bad misnomer for this group? What do we do with all this stuff?
Well, wasn't Comet an Atlantean prince transformed or something like that?
Yeah, there's something weird about that one, right?
And judging from some of the HBO movies and TV shows that went on, I think you can be a sentient pet, can't you?
I guess. I mean,
people can choose to be a pet, can they not?
Yeah,
that's a dark hole we don't want to go down on a PG podcast.
But that movie was fine, and it's cute, and it's for kids, and and all that good stuff. But but here, we see Saturn Girls having a very intelligent conversation with Prody 2, and in fact, Prody 2 themselves say, just remember, I don't attend meetings of things called Legion of Super Pets anymore. And this is very, very intelligent conversation. So I think we all need to rethink this whole super pets thing moving forward.
And then Imra responds by saying, the worst part about that crack is we deserved it.
Exactly. So justice for Proteans.
There we go. Yes, good call out on that one. That was nice. We can't ignore any times Prody 2 or any of the Produs show up. Except when it's Kid Quantum, and then then we can
well, we'll get there eventually.
Yes. The one other thing I wanted to call out that I want to make sure we don't miss is, if the Durlan's natural form is the purple cloak and the no antenna, then if they get arrested, why wouldn't they just switch to their normal form, and then they can't put the binders on them to prevent them from, like, if I'm a so if you catch a Durlan and you want to send them to prison, how do you get them into the Chameleon Boy form with the antenna that you can put the binders on so they can't change, when their natural form from Durla is, anthropomorphic cloaked creature?
Well, this is another thing that I was kind of scratching my head about in this, is that I always felt like Cam was the only real Durlan to or one of the very, very, very few, RJ obviously being another one, to make it off world. And then in the prison, you see apparently there's a bunch of them. There's like this gang, who knows? But yeah, how does this work? I don't understand. And I don't think, come to think of it, I don't think we've actually ever seen a true form of a Durlan. I could be wrong.
I'm trying to find a passage. There was something that I read in that issue that was something along the lines of various tribes of Durlan have a natural form.
Yes, every tribe has its own form or shape. Yeah.
So I was thinking that our standard Chameleon Boy form was that tribe's natural form, and maybe the purple robed the leaders.
Yeah, the speaker or whatever their name was. Yeah, but I assumed that they were on the same tribe, though, I guess is what I was. Yeah, that's where I was getting confused.
Sorry, we just opened up a gigantic can of things that don't make sense with alien races and the Legion. So let's just go with we're good. We're cool. We know I tend to overthink everything anyways. So, I mean, the last part of this, and I think it's fairly obvious because we basically said this 2 episodes ago, and we'll say this again. Read these Legion comics. Does anybody disagree and say that you can skip them? These are top Legion comics. They're worth checking out. If you like Chameleon Boy, you're definitely going to love these. It's also during the Great Darkness Saga. So, I mean, this is as good as it's going to get. We'll kind of go with that. Any thoughts, Derek? Anything that we missed or anything that you wanted to talk about with this before we wrap this up?
No, I think we've pretty much covered everything that we can think of.
Perfect. So, because normally we'll remember something like 2 days later. So I always like to check. And we'll be like, I forgot.
I meant to put that in there. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, so this is like you said, Jay, this is a great stretch of issues. I think, obviously Great Darkness is in here, and that's, quintessential must read. The Cam part of this becomes a C plot as part of this during that stretch. But this, what is this? Almost 2 years worth of issues. Some of the best ever you're going to find, I think.
Yeah. You've got, I mean, it's got everything you could possibly want out of this. And you've got I mean, I'll just say this again. You've got Giffen firing on all cylinders on this. Like the art in some of these is just so beautiful. Highly recommend.
Yep.
Anyways.
And great world building, great character development, great dialogue. It's great.
Yep. Is there anything from the mailbag or anything?
Nothing from the mailbag, but we did a couple social calls. And so I wanted to start going back to some of the social media, especially if somebody posts something on the Discord that we want to get more air from. And the first one, again, comes from Alan, who, after talking about the Prody discussion, he also pointed out another thing we needed to correct from the prior episode with Chameleon Boy. So when we were talking about the Kurt Swan tribute and Chameleon Boy going back into the 40s, 50s, there were actually two at the time, and this is where I got them flipped around. There is a LSH 92, which is actually the Kurt Swan tribute, and this is where the Team 20 is kind of goes back in time and has this this kind of out of time experience. And then the one I was talking about, which is where the Legionnaires go into this golden age environment, that is Legionnaires number 54. So I wanted to make sure that correction was made. And so thanks, Alan, as always.
Yeah, thank you. That was my bad that I realized when I started finding pictures for the videos that we're posting on YouTube, and I was like, I got that 100% wrong. And it was like, so that one's on me. That's my mistake.
And then we got another good comment on Blue Sky at longlivethelegion.bsky.social from our friend Todd, or not Rundgren, on Blue Sky. And he was replying about our kind of discussion about Cam and how he is psychologically. And he has this great comment. He says, I think a better way of thinking of Cam is that he's highly analytical instead of intelligent. In his mind, he is always asking questions. I thought that's a great observation.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, he's just, whether you go with analytical or intelligent or smart, like he's always thinking. Like he's one of those Legionnaires who's thinking in every situation. And I think they show that.
Oh, to the point that we were making of, there's the kind of the book and science smart where, Brainy and Lyle kind of sit, where they're thinking and inventing things, and they have that understanding of how the physical world connects to each other, and being analytical with what he's observing is much more psychological in that way, and analyzing people and the and behaviors around him, right? Which I think it's a great take.
Okay, so as we're going to wrap this up, Derek, I want to give you some time to plug whatever you want to plug, tell everybody where they can find you. And I just want to say, like, you've got the two podcasts, they're both awesome. Can you give a little bit of description of both to appeal to some people and get them to give it a try? Because I do recommend they give both a try.
Okay, no worries. So the Legion of Substitute Podcasters is our flagship show. It's been going for 13 years, I think now, 14 years. So we're up to episode 900 and something, 104, I think was the last one that was released. It's a weekly podcast, and each week we tackle one issue and we read through it. We read all the dialogue, we describe what's going on in the panels for the art, and we deconstruct it as we go along, or mock, as the case may be. It's probably more mocking than deconstructing sometimes. So we're currently in the reboot. Issue 101 of Legion of Superheroes was the last one that came down, I think. And then Brent and I, we did Tomorrow's Heroes Today, which was a deep dive into the three boot. So it was 50 issues that we did in 60 podcasts. So it was a bit longer than we were expecting, because we found three booters popping up in various other books. And then we rounded it off with a reread of Legion of Three Worlds. Yeah. I am not very active on the socials. I have a Facebook and things like that, but I don't post very often. I don't blog or anything like that. So I'm not very out there on the medias.
All right. Well, if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't subscribed to the Legion of Subs feed, what are you waiting for? Go do that right now and get caught up.
And you can find that at legionofsubstitutepodcasters.com.
And Tomorrow's Hero Today, that's on the same feed, right?
Yes, that's on the same feed. So we've wrapped that up. Brent and I do have plans to do something else. We just haven't quite decided what we're going to do yet.
Awesome. Can't wait to find out.
All right. And Jim, where can everybody find you?
So I have my Legion reviews and other comic book reviews at jimboslegion.blogspot.com, where I'm mainly have Legion content, but I have a few Superman things and a few other things. In fact, Derek, when I was doing my 3-boot releases on my site, I think I was like maybe a few episodes ahead of where you guys were whenever you guys were releasing episodes. So that was kind of fun to listen to your all's take on that stuff. Yeah, and I also found things like the Brave and the Bold, the other crossover stuff that happened for the 3-boots. That was always really fun. You can find me personally on Blue Sky at jimbofett.bsky.social, on Reddit at jimbofett87, and on Discord as jimbofett on the Legion Fan Club Discord, as well as the CPOV Discord. How about you, Jay?
All right. So I do a weekly column doing Legion reviews. You can find that at jmlonglivethelegion.blogspot.com. I am into the retro route pretty deep now, so it's a lot of how much do we hate Earthman? So if you hate Earthman as much as the rest of us do, you will love these reviews.
And you should.
Yeah, it's me trying to find little gems in comics that are like, wow, I hate that they've done this to Shadowlast. But anyways, if you want to find me on Blue Sky, I am at jmckiernan.bsky.social. If you want to find me on Discord as Jem mentioned, the Legion or certain POV, I am at, or on Reddit. My username is Drake Burrows because that's my favorite Legionnaire. And as well, if you want to just follow this podcast, it's longlivethelegion.blogspot.com. Did I get that right?
.bsky.social. Longlivethelegion.bsky.social. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. My
or you can send us an email
gone.
and just let us know what you think at longlivethelegion2025@gmail.com. And then,
or you can follow us on Instagram.
That's right.
Because we're there as well.
And YouTube. Oh my God, we're everywhere.
Yeah, so find us there, like, subscribe, everything. We've got, all of our podcasts got up on YouTube and on whatever platform you find your podcast. So please like us, subscribe us, whatever you need to do. It helps the podcast move forward and it helps us reach more people, which is what we always want. Aside from that, I think we are good for the week. Yes?
Yes, I think so. And until we see you guys next time, we're going to shut down the mission monitor board and say, long live the Legion.
Long live the Legion.
Long live the Legion.
Hey, Nerf herders.
You sure you want to go with that?
Hey, everyone.
There we go. More inviting.
Have you ever had a movie that you really wanted to love, but something holds you back?
Or one that you did love in spite of a flaw?
Well, I'm Case Aiken.
And I'm Sam Alisea.
And on Another Pass, we sit down with cool guests to look at movies that we find fascinating.
But flawed.
And we try to imagine what could have been done when they were made to give them that little push.
We're not experts. We just believe in criticism.
Constructive criticism.
Sure.
So come take another pass at some movies with us.
And every now and then, we can celebrate movies that did it on their own, too.
You can find us at certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
certainpov.com.